All right, so everybody that's listening to us, whether it's audio, video, I think that's what all we can do. We thank you for listening. We hope that you do subscribe and share this show in general, and that would be great because we do want to get the word out. We're talking about autism today. It's an important topic. I believe this is correct. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 99 that one out of every 32 kids now is autistic that is being born. We're seeing a lot of boys that are autistic in general, obviously a lot of girls too. But regardless, it's very much an epidemic. California is extremely bad with that statistic, but it's happening all around the country in general. We will get into what we believe it is, and we're not scientists or God, so we can't say anything for sure, but we'll talk about that. A special guest today, Karen Simmons. It's KarenSimmons.com, and she does work and run Autism Today, autismtoday.com. Karen, thanks so much. It's really an important topic. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me on, Rob. I really, really appreciate it.
Right.
It's a,
So, and
go
go ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry, Karen.
I was
No,
going to say
my
it's a passion close to my heart.
right. Yeah, and I know you have family members that have autism. I do as well. And I think that this is why we have you on, because I'm sure, regardless of who's listening, they do know someone in their family or friend circle that does have a child or a family member with autism. Again, a very important topic. And again, we're grateful to have you on the program. Let's just talk a little bit about your journey with autism, how it started before we get into autism today.
That sounds great. So I actually have 7 kids, and
Wow.
one was diagnosed with autism after I had a near-death experience when I had my last child.
Wow.
And I got the diagnosis of Jonathan in 1992. And then there were only 34 books on the topic at the time.
Yes.
So it was so hard to find resources that I didn't want other parents and other people to have to struggle the way I did. When I found out the diagnosis of my son sitting in the parking lot of Safeway, that, oh, your kid's going to end up in an institution and there's not much you can do. And so many parents are told that story.
Do
So
you, and I know we're going to get into a little bit, we're going to we do a little mix and match here. You bring up something, I do want to hit it. So that will be kind of where we're all over the place, but we do want to get all the facts out. When you brought that up about the institution aspect, and I know a lot of family members, parents in general do worry about that. What would you tell someone that's listening that has a child with autism that obviously we don't live forever? Maybe they have some family members that will take in that child. Maybe they don't. What would you tell them to make sure that they get their children's issues in order so that, God forbid they pass away, they have all this going on. So when that happens, their child doesn't get pushed into some kind of government care, which will not end well for the child, probably.
agreed. I'm totally in agreement with that. So we just did a World Autism Summit, and we covered 7 different areas from cradle to later life issues, because that is a big, big issue. Children hit the age of 21 a lot of times, and all the supports go away. So it's hard to navigate where the child's going to live, or adult at that time, what's going to happen. And it's really important that parents start early to look at these and don't get stuck in a state of denial. In the past, many parents, even between each other, got in a state of denial. Well, my child doesn't have autism, or you caused it, or the blame game, or all these other types of things. And they need to get past that as fast as possible, get their child on a trajectory towards looking at the future, what the future might hold. There's a lot more people now that are doing a lot more advocacy work and setting up systems and processes so that people can find the right tools that they need in their area. And that's what we're looking at doing.
So when we hear about all these big autism groups, I'm not going to name them all because I don't want to leave one out. And I don't, we want to publicize you. We don't want to publicize these other groups. and I hear all these groups, they do nice commercials, you donate at Walgreens or CVS, couple of bucks. What really, and I know you can't speak for these organizations, but I don't really see them doing that much besides maybe conference calls. Maybe they have a nice website. It seems like the money that you donate to these organizations, no one knows where it goes. What makes you different with Autism Today than these other organizations, which we won't name?
Yes. Okay. I basically autism to well, other autism organizations are great and they're doing a great job of reaching out and doing research. That's kind of hard to monitor what kind of research, where that research money is going, and what it's doing. Like what kind of research, basically. Are we trying to look at what, like a lot of them are looking at what's causing or autism, trying to fix people, and the adult population and people who have kids with autism want to look at other things. Where can we go? We have a child with autism, and Autism Today has always been a star. Our brand has always been a star because we always look at the gifts, the strengths, and the talents of people with autism and focus on the positive as opposed to trying to find something wrong with people. Because ultimately, we're all different people, everybody, not just people with autism or neurodiversity. All people are unique and different and have their own gifts, strengths, and talents. Today, that's where our focus is focusing on those gifts, strengths, and talents to bring out the best in people with autism and neurodiversity.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I went to college. I had a student that I was very close with. He was my roommate, best guy you ever meet. He had Asperger's. It's very different than autism. Can we talk about this? Because everybody sees, since autism is like the big topic, obviously, we just mentioned 1 in 32. So everybody has autism now. People kind of use that term very broad, and they put that in with people, again, that do have Asperger's, that do have other issues with themselves, that obviously it's no fault of their own, but it's very broad. Can you talk about that and what the differences are between autism and, obviously there's many other things going on right now in society?
Well, with the DSM-5, the autism diagnosis was recategorized, and people with Asperger's fell into that autism spectrum. Of course, they're on the end of the spectrum, but they are still, re-diagnosed as being autistic. Now, there's different levels of autism. There's a level 1, a level 2, a level 3. So it's not saying better or worse than, or we're not trying to fix anybody. We're just trying to focus on what types of challenges they have and enhance the challenge, enhance them with the.
But Karen, do you feel like that's gotten like too broad of a term, that they're just throwing everybody into this now instead of making it? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think it's for autism. If people know what they're doing and know what they're looking for, if we have the right professionals, we're looking basically at 4 different areas: social skills, communication, sensory issues, and behavior. And 2 of those affect, of course, your social skills and your behavior. If you imagine yourself or your child trying to walk across the house just to get a beautiful object at the top of the cabinet, he can't talk, or he's very, very sensitive. He may walk on his tippy toes. And there's just so many variables, but I would say that those are the 4 main areas that we look at.
Again, for people listening, I'm sorry, Karen, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. I think there's a little bit of a lag, and I apologize to people listening to this. I think there's a little bit of a lag maybe on my end. That's why I do a little bit of an interruption there, and I apologize for that. But again, for people listening, it's Karen Simmons, KarenSimmons.com. Again, AutismToday.com. We have a lot of audience questions, so I kind of want to do, again, some mix and match with what we're speaking about. I'm going to try to make them a little even keel with what we're speaking about, but there are some questions all over the place in general.
I bet.
So I'll try to fix some somewhat together. But anyways, regardless, so, we just went into, obviously how to make sure the parents have their affairs in order. So if, they have a child, or a family member in general has a child with autism, they know what's going to happen to that child when they pass on. I do want to dive a little bit deeper into taking care of an autistic child in general. A lot of people that see people with autism in general, they don't really understand how much time and patience, and I know you do, Karen, because you've had an autistic child in general, so you know what goes into this. Can you educate the people listening about how much of a job this is? This is like a second job for some parents, and obviously they love their child, but it is obviously hard to raise a child in general, not to mention raising an autistic child on top of
Right. Well, like a lot of those challenges I was talking about, the sensory challenges cause so many challenges in behavior and meltdowns, because if they can't communicate, how do they get what they want? And how do they get things done? And if they have problems with potty training, that's a challenge too. And if you can imagine a 14 or 15-year-old child that isn't potty trained, they're in diapers, and you can't get those diapers, they're not available because that's a mid-size. There's going to the grocery store, people make fun of you because you don't handle your child well. So there's a lot of emotional things that go along with that. There are many sibling issues. I had many kids in my house at the same time. I had 6 kids at like within 9 years. So we had a lot of dynamics going on. Yeah. We had the sandwich kid who was sandwiched in between 2 special needs kids. And then we had the older 3 kids who, though they were all in diapers at the same time, so I had to deal with them while Jonathan was going through his intervention. Gosh, how many different types of challenges. Social skills, getting invited to birthday parties. Yeah. If your child doesn't get invited to birthday parties, it hurts your feelings. It hurts my feelings. It really bothered me when Jonathan wasn't invited to birthday parties, or Alex either, and it hurts them too. So I think that the awareness of what autism looks like, how it impacts the family, even the parents, a lot of times the other adults in their lives will walk away or move away because they don't want to have anything to do with the parents because they don't understand autism. And it's just an uncomfort. It's a lack of being comfortable in that scenario, in that setting. Yeah.
Do you feel like issues with kids with autism, and I guess I'll frame it this way. Do you feel like the way they're treated, that obviously autism, as far as people knowing about it, people spreading the advocacy for it, has changed since, as you stated, when I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when Jonathan was born or involved in the 80s and in the early 90s, obviously people know more about it now. I'm not saying that there's no bullying around anymore. That will never change. It's, life in this world. But do you feel like it's gotten a little bit better than it was as far as tolerate?
I do. I think that people are being more tolerant of differences, and they're also starting to recognize the signs of autism. So that's important, because if you don't, if somebody's flapping their hands in the air, it might look cute on a 2.5-year-old, but if somebody's 16 or 19 and they're, making odd movements, people are starting to understand that that's most likely autism. But it's been a huge mind shift, and a lot more people need to understand it too. What are those signs? What can I do about those signs? How can I approach the person without being afraid that they're going to hit me or whatever, if they're severe. I know that there's cases where people don't get the right intervention, the autistic person, and if they're not able to eat the more than 2 or 3 different types of foods, or they might throw the refrigerator across the room because they haven't had their behavioral challenges met and worked through different behavioral interventions, which there are many. Yeah.
And I want to get, go ahead, Karen.
No, they're important. Behavioral interventions are important. And it's also important to know that there's not just one behavioral intervention, there's different types. So I think parents and adults should be aware of the different types of interventions there are, which is why I started Autism Today, because I wanted to give people the choice and be able to choose what they want for their own child, because everybody's different.
I want to move into these last few questions.
Okay.
It's like an audience question here. Talk about siblings taking care of other siblings when the parents or the caretaker passes on. What advice would you give? Obviously, a sibling, and you have quite a few siblings for your kids. So, but that sibling taking care of their brother, their sister, whoever it may be, that has autism when their caretaker passes on. Any advice for the sibling?
Well, you certainly don't want to build resentment inside of a family. You want to make sure that the right placement is with the right person. And maybe it's a sibling, but maybe it's not. If that sibling is resentful of all the attention that the child got while growing up, they may build all these different feelings around that. But some siblings are very understanding and want to take care of their brother or sister.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, early intervention is very important. The more you know, the more you can set the child or adult on the right trajectory towards the best life. And that's what we did with our World Autism Summit. We wanted to paint the full picture, because I didn't see a lot of things, when I was in my 40s or 50s that I see now. And it's a whole lifetime that you need to navigate around the different challenges and focus on the good.
I want you to talk to the people listening that are watching this. You have Autism 101 behind you, and then obviously the Chicken Soup for the Soul behind you. Talk of both those books. Obviously, you were involved in those for the people that are watching this.
Yes, I actually was the person who put together the Autism 101 manual, and we got a gold medal for that 2 times. So that was really good. It has 53 authors, people that have autism or people that are professionals in the autism field, like Temple Grandin, Stephen Shore, Barry Prezant, many different experts. Doreen Grampiche, who is the head of the Card Center. We had lots of different people come forth and give their expertise so we could paint that picture, that whole picture. That was the thing I missed the most when I was looking at what's going to happen with my son. Where is he going to end up? At the very, very beginning, I had nothing to pay attention to, or there was nothing there. So I wanted people to understand that there are those choices, and there's also a good picture at the end of the rainbow. In the chicken soup book, we have a story. It's called Welcome to Holland. And it's a beautiful story about how a woman gets ready to go to Italy, and she's very, very excited about going to Italy. And she packs all of her beautiful high heels and her dresses and her fancy hats and got all the road maps for Italy. Mm-hmm. So she got on the plane, and all her friends were talking about how great Italy is. And so she got on the plane, and it landed in Holland. And so she got off the plane, and lo and behold, she was disappointed because she thought, well, where's Italy? I don't see Italy. So she looked around and she saw all the tulips and all the windmills and all the different types of things that she could see. And certainly it was a very, very different journey, but she learned that she could embrace that journey just as much as she was going to embrace the Italy journey. And even though all her friends were bragging about how great Italy was, she was still very happy she went to Holland, and she just embraced a different path. So I think that tells a lot about, people get taken by surprise as to where they're going to end up, but they don't need to look at it as a negative. They need to look at it as something different.
Last question. Well, there's 2 left. But the last audience question I'll just say is, we obviously have been talking about 1 in 32. I remember it was like 1 in 100 and something. Then it was 60 something. Now it's 32. It's kind of scary how these numbers just keep jumping and jumping. And it's very worrisome for the American workforce, American population, world populations. I don't know how the statistics are around the world, but I speak obviously because of I'm American. Where do you feel like things went wrong with everybody now? It seems like is getting autism.
Well, I remember the days it was 1 in 10,000. So,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
it goes back to then. I think they've broadened the diagnosis and they're realizing a lot of things that could contribute to the diagnosis. And I think that they're opening their eyes to that. That's one thing I think. So I know you're going to ask me a question. Go ahead.
No, we hear a lot about environmental issues. Obviously, and I know you don't want to get into this. There is the talk about the vaccine issue also. So obviously people have different theories on that. People have different theories on the environmental issues, specifically because of California, the environmental issue has risen. So that's kind of where I've heard a lot. I don't want you to dive too deep because I'm sure people listening get all offended about everything in the kitchen sink now. But if you want to interject on that, otherwise, we'll keep moving forward.
Well, I will say that there's people need to do their research and look
Fair.
into maybe how many studies have been done on certain areas, and they need to do their own homework. We're certainly an unbiased platform because we want to make sure that everybody has a voice. The people that believe in a certain way and the people that believe in a different way. It's kind of like being political. We want we want people to do their own research and look into the different things that might affect, certain things, like what kind of studies were done, how were they compared, what are we really talking about here? And I would invite people to look into that themselves, and then they'll have a deeper understanding. And certainly there's a lot of research online and offline that they can look into.
Very good answer. We'll end there as far as that goes. I do want to ask you, we've talked about quite a few things, I should say, throughout this interview. What do you hope people learn from our talk today? Because we've talked about so many different things.
Well, what we're doing is we're moving the needle of understanding and support fastest way possible globally in order to help people with neurodiversity and autism in our own way. And we're doing that through focusing on the gifts, strengths, and talents. Bottom line, I think I would like for people to learn to focus on what the good side of things are. And I know everybody calls me Pollyanna, and you don't even know who Pollyanna is, but she fell out of a tree and she got a broken arm, and then everything was roses and butterflies. But but I like to look at the good side, because then you can have hope, then you can have understanding, then you can do something, with the person and help them live a fulfilling, satisfying life. Like in my first book, Little Rain Man, the very last page of that was about sitting on a picnic ground with the family and just being happy to be alive and being happy of who the person is. That's what we ultimately want for our children, is for them to be happy.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Again, for people listening, KarenSimmons.com, AutismToday.com. We do hope people look into the books. Karen, where can people get the books if they want to contact you also as we move to the end here?
They can contact me directly. I'm getting them online because we're redesigning some parts of my website. So they can get them from me directly. So it's Karen at autismtoday.com.
Okay. What about the books? They're on Amazon, I assume, yeah?
Yeah, they are. They're on Amazon. Yes. Isn't everything?
Yeah, I know everything's Amazon now. But we do hope you look into the books, Amazon, or you can go to your local bookstore. I'm sure they can find the book and get it. And we like to push people more towards that, but Amazon it is, if that's the only place you can go. But Karen, first of all, thanks so much for coming on and spreading the news about autism in general. Again, it's a very important topic. Many people around the world listening to our program know someone family member, friend that has autism or has a family member with autism. We do hope people listening go to KarenSimmons.com, or also, if they don't go to that, go to autismtoday.com. Find more about the mission of Autism Today. And if you can sign up to the email list, so maybe you can help someone that you know, or maybe someone that's a friend. Again, Karen Simmons, thanks so much. We hope you come back on.
Well, thank you so much. It's really great being on, Rob.